we're going to be talking about how high noon living is the best preparation for receiving the blessing and marriage. Yeah.
Mm.
Do you guys believe that it is? And why?
Yes. Yes, I believe. I believe because I've seen it in with my own eyes. I've seen that the couples who truly make things work, they're the ones who are practicing all these virtues that we hold true in our high noon organization, right? The high noon lifestyle. The couples who truly are able to overcome like most challenges, they're the ones who are able to connect with each other. They know how to deal with their emotions. They know how to be honest with each other and to give and receive grace and to keep each other accountable, and to have other brothers and sisters to keep them accountable when maybe their spouse is not the right person to talk to in that moment. And those couples that truly embody integrity, I've seen it with my own eyes, so I have to believe it. What?
Yeah, got it. So you have personal experience, but also it makes sense, right? That if you have people that can practice honesty and accountability, integrity, that if they bring that into the relationship, it'll work. What about you, Samara? Do you think it's true, and why?
Yeah, I do. I think it's sometimes we might connect the word like living a high noon life to the organization, right, and not to the concept of living a high noon life. But I really feel that's what God wants for us, and that's the way He can connect to us, right? So it's not only a matter of like preaching that we need to do the five virtues and we need to do this, and that, but it's really a way to feel God's love, to connect to that source of happiness that we don't even realize how big and how fulfilling He can be, right? So yeah, I think the groups really help with that, and David shared about it already, like how you can practice those virtues with the group. But I would like to add as well that, as we were saying before, we constantly receive a lot of negativity about sexuality. So this is like an opportunity that you can read your parents' words and you can talk to people about sexuality in a nice, safe way, right? And a lot of people, especially the girls that I approached to join the program, that I would like have one-on-one with them, they told me that they really appreciated having this space to talk about sexuality, because otherwise they would feel very blocked, right? Very stuck. And of course, that's not healthy when you move into a relationship, because you do need to talk about your sexuality. It's a very important part of your relationship, right? Uh, there was even one sister that she did have an experience with sexual abuse, and it was really hard for her to talk about sexuality. And through reading Core of the Universe, she was slowly but steady exposing herself to more positive ways of seeing sexuality. She was doing that together with her parents. So she also had that emotional support, right? So I really feel that trying to practice this high noon lifestyle, that you get rid of your shadows and you work, like you constantly work to maintain that, right, through those resources, um, is the only way. Basically, it's not the most important thing. I think it's the only way that you can like really connect to God, right, and fulfill the purpose of the blessing, which is resembling God, right, being like vertically one with Him or her.
Yeah. So in your matching, did you guys find practicing these high noon concepts helpful? I guess I'm looking for like a really specific example of when you guys were talking, engaged during your engagement process, of having to give each other grace and being honest and stuff.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because we might think like, oh, you only need to be honest and give grace when there is a big problem,
Mm,
right? As I was
mhm.
sharing like about the first talk that we had, that he was sharing about his own struggles with porn and masturbation, and I really felt that he had integrity and he was really working hard on that. So it was easier for me to offer grace, right? But I'm not sure if that's the situation you're referring, but there was another situation that I felt that I needed to receive grace, right? Even though I wasn't doing something like so wrong per se, but I didn't want to burden him. He's a very serving person and a very understanding person. So I was feeling down, or I was not feeling so well, and I felt afraid of sharing that with him because I didn't want to burden him. I didn't want to make him feel bad, right? So even though it seems small, but for me it was a big like step that I had to take, that I had to have the courage to trust him that he would take it. That was the best thing I could do, to express that I wasn't feeling well, right? And to let him help me. And to offer myself the grace that I don't need to be perfect all the time. I don't need to be happy all the time. I don't need to deserve the service and love that he gives to me, right? So I had to go through this like process of wanting to share with him, and eventually I did. Um, so I feel that I've gotten better at this. Nowadays I feel pretty like free to share about anything that happens in my life. And for him as well, I feel that I could trust him a lot, and I could really see his commitment to me and to God and to his integrity. That every time even the smallest thing would happen, like he was attracted to someone, or he would have a slip up, but it wasn't like all the way per se. The first thing he would do w- would be calling me and explaining everything and just expressing his emotions. And it's really a way that you can get rid of that heaviness that you were talking about, the shame, right? That can create this vicious cycle and just make things worse.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I know, based on experience of working with matching couples, is that many times people don't make it past that conversation. It's just like, oh, you struggle with porn or struggled with porn, blacklisted, wall, bye. you know, uh, and it's so there's something in you that was wanted to, or both of you that wanted to give grace, right? Um, and would you feel like you would be able to do that without your high noon training?
No, not at all. The first time I heard about porn and masturbation, on my first process, that was not the reason why I decided to not continue in that process. But the first time I heard about it, I was like so traumatized that I cried for like 2 days.
Mm,
And I was talking to my family and to my sister-in-law and to my brother, and I felt really scared, right? I
mm,
felt like if someone cannot control themselves in that area of sexuality, how can I trust that we're going to have a relationship where he's going to be able to control himself? And then my older brother, shared with me his own struggles, and I trust my brother, of course. So I felt, okay, maybe it's not so bad as I think. I can try to understand where it comes from and why it happens. And that's why I decided to join Heimlich, right, and become a facilitator and to listen to people. I think that was a big thing. Um, I wasn't in a, let's say, threatening situation that I have to decide whether or not I'm going to have that person as the my eternal partner, right? So it was a little bit easier to like understand people's perspective, struggles, and really separate the person from the act, right? I remember Karina was talking to me once, and she told me that like you don't have to worry so much about uh, the addiction, but what that person is. Do he has integrity? Does he have integrity? Does he have responsibility in his life? Is he a courageous person? Does he speak the truth? Is he someone that has a goal in life and is trying to pursue that goal, right? If he has those let's say virtues, then it's just a matter of time for him to overcome that addiction, right? And yeah, and then after that, I had other processes that unfortunately I didn't feel that was the case. There were still a lot of other areas in life because the addiction, I started to understand that it was actually a symptom of something much deeper, right? So unfortunately, the other matching processes I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel that they had those virtues very consolidated, but I could still feel that I loved the person, right? That I could like love the person. And because of that, when my husband told me about his struggles, the first thing I thought wasn't like, oh, I'm scared, but he's being really honest because I didn't even ask him about this. And he's sharing honestly and vulnerably. And he was telling me that he was working on his integrity. And I could see that he was not only saying it, but he was actually also working on it for real. He had been like clear from porn for quite some time. He had invested in a software. He had an accountability partner, I think 3 different accountability partners. He was part of a high noon group. He was a facilitator. He was like, doing a lot of other stuff and other hints that I got from his life that I could see that he had those like 5 virtues and understanding of the sexual organs, sexuality. But if it wasn't for all this process, all this journey, when he shared to me like, oh, I still struggle with masturbation, I would be like, I don't know, like it would, I don't know if I would have continued the process. Maybe I would, but if with a much more afraid and worried approach that of course wouldn't benefit the process, right? And like, giving him the chance to show his true self.
Yeah. David, I know this conversation is close to home for you. Do you have any input on it or opinion?
On what exactly? Like the accountability aspect?
Well, I know that like your sexual integrity is such an important thing to you for preparing for marriage, right? It's like one of your sacred benchmarks. So I guess, why is it important to you? And how will you have these conversations in your matching process when you do start that?
Right. Okay, well, I'll start by answering the first part. Why is it important to me? I think not everybody truly understands what the blessing really means, or like what's the bigger picture of the blessing. Some people just think it's our movement's way of getting married, right? Just like maybe other faiths, Christianity, other faiths, Muslim, like, I don't know. There are many different ways of getting married. I guess sometimes our members just think it's our way of getting married. But I've really learned through reading The Core of the Universe and through just learning through conversations with people who are blessed that God truly from the beginning had a much bigger picture for the blessing, that it would be something that unifies a man and a woman, which theoretically is a very crazy thing to do, to get someone of the absolute opposite in everything and put them together, and that they create a beautiful relationship built upon honesty and good communication, and the desire to share the same life values, the same goal in life, and they are able to make love together, but then also eventually produce children and raise those children to have the same values and experience joy together. So the reason why it's important for me to be focusing so much on the sexual aspect, my sexual integrity before going into the blessing, is because I genuinely believe that that's God's vision for everyone, that we go into the blessing with control over our sexual organ, and really purity in our heart. There might be times where we had struggled in the past. There might have been big mistakes we had made, but as we teach here in High Noon, like, purity is not like an egg. When it's broken, it's gone forever. Purity is more like a garden, so it's something that can be nurtured and taken care of over time, and you'll need to take care of it for all time, whilst you're alive, even after you're blessed. So I could just say that I just want to get married and that's it, but I really genuinely believe that God gave us the blessing as a way to connect wholeheartedly to our spouse, but also to connect to God as well. That when we have that first night experience, like Samara, you were just sharing about yours with Nori and the challenges you had to overcome with that one, with the first night experience. But even if we, the people, the man and the woman, have an okay experience, or maybe a not so okay experience, God is also experiencing that with us, right? And God wants to experience the joy of our first night together with us. And even if we don't have the best experience, God will, because God is, it sounds a bit selfish. Why do you have a good experience, God, when we don't have a good experience now? God deserves it, I think,
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's we can think about it that way, but I think God wants to experience joy with us, and that's why He created His children, so that He can experience joy together. And that, for me, it sounds like the most beautiful thing ever. So that's why it's important to me, because it sounds so beautiful. And I've never come across a better sounding concept for my future. Never. So that's all I can really count on, is my experience of seeing other blessed couples and the beauty of their relationship, but also knowing deep down that this is what God desires. Yeah.
Amazing. Very cool. That's cool. I like that a lot. Thank you.
So cool.
So yes, what about when you start a relationship, when you're communicating with a young lady sometime in the future? Do you know how you're going to talk about sexual integrity, absolute sex with her? Kind of while you're getting to know each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a full idea of how that's going to go. It doesn't sound sorry, it doesn't sound like something you can fully plan. I think it has to be approached case by case, right? Each person's going to be different. But I feel like one thing that's really important to me is just to find out what this young woman, what she thinks about when she's asked the question, what do you think about sex and marriage and the blessing? Does she truly believe that sexuality is something to be experienced for joy with God? And I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily looking for someone with a perfect past. In fact, someone with a perfect past almost seems unrealistic. I think the best kind of person to look for is someone who has struggled, but has overcome that, because they have the skills, they have what it takes to be a true wife, in my opinion. That's what I've seen, is that the people who truly know how to overcome addiction, who know how to become owners of their integrity, and to be able to communicate well with people and be honest about their sexuality. That's something we only really see here in High Noon, in our groups, where maybe we see it in other places, but mainly here in High Noon, we get to see people being truly honest about their sexuality, which no one does that in the world. Truly, no one's talking about this in such an open and honest way. So that's what I really value in someone, is in someone who can really be honest about themselves. But they take pride in the fact that they're not perfect, but they've worked to get there, just like I have worked to get to that point. And I think another one is children. Like, does she want to have children? That would be a big one for me. How are we going to use our sexual energy? I was saying this to someone on the workshop here in Poland, that isn't it so magical that we human beings have the power to create a living person? Like, just take a second. It's amazing. It's incredible. Benjy, how did you make 3 of them? That's just like mind-blowing.
I didn't do much.
Okay, you didn't make. Well, you part of the making process, mate. But yeah, I think it's truly magical that God gave us this special superpower to create life out of our sexual organs. It's just so cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about sex with my future matching partner, because it's a huge thing. It's a big part of life. It's a big part of my life already as a single person, and I want it to be an even bigger thing when I come together with my future spouse.
Got it. Yeah. Well, my wife and I have been through a process of talking about sexuality and sex. Actually, we're both very different in the way that we talk about it, because I wanted to talk about it a very specific way and engage in sexuality in a very specific way. And she had a completely different opposite expectation. So, for example, Samara, our first night, which was like 4 years after we received the blessing, by the way, which sounds crazy to think about. Like, we had our first night 4 years after our wedding. But that was our decision. And I went through this whole ordeal of like preparing candles and getting the hundoke and the altar ready and all the things that I thought make a romantic relationship. And then like we started the evening and I was like lighting these candles and she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Just lighting candles." She's like, "You can't light candles in here. The fire alarm's going to go off." But basically she was like, why? She had no concept that that's even a thing. I don't know. I just assumed that that's what you do, right? And she's like, "No, turn that off." And then, so our whole relationship has been somewhat like that, kind of like wanting the same thing and having that implicit understanding, but having conversations around it in different ways, right? So I'm more like, I want to spend time together, do pillow time, like right before bed every night at a specific time. We talk about these specific things. And she's more like, let's just talk about it all day, like anytime, just while we're doing dishes, while we're driving, just talk about stuff all the time. Why do we have to make specific time? I'm the one that wants to plan our sexual intimacy so that we can anticipate it. And she's just like, well, let's just do it when we feel like it, that kind of thing. And who's right? They're both needed, right? Both perspectives are needed. Thus, that's what a couple is. That is what it makes the blessing exciting. What makes marriage exciting is that we have just this difference that in the beginning is challenging if you choose to see it as a problem, right? If you choose to say like, "Oh, we're different. This is a problem. This is wrong. This is not meant to be. I want to end this now." Yeah, that's challenging. But if you see it as like, "Oh, this is part of the process of learning how to become one. This is part of it. This is the process of us becoming like coal becoming diamond through a lot of pressure, rocks grinding up against each other to become smooth pearls, pebbles, And it took me a long time to realize that, but I'm grateful I did, because now I'm just like, it's just fun. It's a lot more fun when you can just accept that people are different from you. And that's interesting, It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just my spouse is different from me. And that's exciting. I feel like the ultimate goal in a marriage is to go through the phases of like something's cute and then it's annoying and then it's just funny, right? So for example, my wife likes natto. She loves natto. At first I was like, that's gross. And then I was like, well, that's cute. It's cute how she likes natto, and she eats her little natto and it's like all stringy and slimy. And I'm just like, oh, that's so cute how Japanese she is. You know, she goes out of her way to get natto and it's expensive in America and she doesn't care. And then eventually it was annoying. Where like when we're really fighting and arguing, it's just like, can you not eat natto right now? Please. It smells terrible, like dead fish. Come on. And then now I'm just at a point where like it's just funny. It's just funny how she likes natto. And my kids love natto ever since they were babies, and they're all eating their natto. And every time I see them eating natto, I'm like, that's my wife's influence, you know? We live in America. It's hard to find natto, and we always have natto in our house. And my son will go out of his way to make his own, is, you know, like the nori, you put the nori, the seaweed, and you put the rice, and he makes his own natto sushi, whatever he calls it, and he rolls it up and then he cuts it and then he eats that. It's like his snack, right? And that's an illustration of what the beauty of marriage can be, is just all the things that you think are like annoyances or terrible or even mistakes, right? If there's a place in our heart where eventually in our marriages, Samara, we can look at our mistakes and the mistakes of our spouse and just laugh at it. Just be like, huh, I remember that time you watched porn and I threw a dish at your face. Or, you know, that time you said that thing that was really unloving and I hurt my feelings, and, you know, and just laugh about it later with our children. It's truly the beauty of the blessing, I think, is, and I think really ultimately that's why practicing these 5 virtues of High Noon is the blueprint to experience God in our blessings and really make excellent candidates. And just like you said, David and Samara, High Noon does not have the worst candidates. We have the best candidates for marriage, the best, because most people are struggling with sexual integrity, statistically speaking, and only a select few are doing something about it. And those are the people in High Noon. So wouldn't you rather marry someone that's willing to be honest about it and struggle a little bit, have victory, and know how to bring that skill set into their relationship? Yeah. And I love what you said, dude, that you would like a spouse that had some victory over some mistakes and challenges. Yeah. Because if someone is perfect, you know, quote unquote, or surface level perfect, never made a mistake, they think, that's actually quite concerning, right? It's a little bit alarming, you know. If a man has never had a sexual urge, I'd be a little concerned if I was a woman.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I'd be a little concerned. Yeah. So let's see if we covered all of our questions. You guys have anything else to add here?
Yeah, I think it's one of the other questions that we were going to talk about is about how to have a radiant blessing, right, in the future. Which is what we are basically doing in the program, preparing singles for the blessing. And not only to get blessed, but to excel in the blessing. And yeah, we covered that part of the 5 virtues that is really important. And David was also talking about what the blessing really means, right? And he talked in a very romantic way. By the way, his favorite movie is Titanic. So he's a very romantic guy. And yeah, so I feel that this is really important, you know, like to really understand what the blessing is. We have a WhatsApp group, discussion group chat that people talk a lot about a lot of stuff. And recently we had this conversation, like what is the difference between a marriage and the blessing? And it seems like an obvious question, but it's not so easy to answer, right? Why is the blessing different? Why are we pursuing the blessing? There's this whole thing of like, oh, we want to resemble God and this and that, but do you really feel it? You know, like, do you really understand what it means? Like, And why is it different from a marriage? Because, well, Catholics also think that to become one, right? They don't have the concept that God has dual characteristics and that we are going to resemble God, but they do have this same concept that to become one, right? So, what is different in the blessing, right? And why is it something that we cannot break, right? And I recently answered this question in our group chat as well, based on an experience that my parents had, right? That I was kind of like talking to my dad because my mom was being rude to him. And I told him, like, why don't you just leave, right? Because if it was me, someone treating me like that, I would be like, okay, bye, see you. I don't want someone treating me like that, right? And he looked at me with a very puzzled face, like genuinely puzzled. He was like, what do you mean? This is my other half. I cannot leave her. I can't leave without my other half. It's like as if you were asking me to remove an arm and a leg. I won't survive. She's my other half, right? So I think it goes beyond the logical understanding, right? But really having those like moments that you can have give and take with people and like groups like this one that you can dive deep into this concept and have constant reflection about it and see how that looks like for you right now and how is that going to look like for you in the future, right? And also the concept of lineage that we talk little about, right? And it seems so abstract, like, oh, it's something magical that you gained from your parents and your parents. That's why you're second gen. And I feel that that's a discussion that we can have more in the future as well. But I would like to share a little bit of my understanding of what lineage is, right? Um, that it's kind of like the whole point of the fall is that it was selfish, right? It was based in a selfish feeling, and restoration is the opposite, right? You have to live selflessly. You have to live for the sake of others. So that's basically what your parents have done their whole life. So it's like as if you are at a, oh, I forgot the word in English. This place that there is the judge and the people to
The court.
the court. Thank you. You are at a court, and then there is Satan and God, right? And you. And they're kind of like debating who to whom you belong. And if you do certain things, right, God can claim you. He can say, okay, he's mine. He belongs to my lineage. Whereas if you do other things, then Satan's going to claim it, right? And because your parents have lived their whole life for the sake of others, then there's no way Satan can claim that, right? God can say, okay, this one is really like belongs to my lineage. And our parents also like created their relationship based on that as well, living for the sake of others. They weren't thinking about themselves at all. They went to the blessing and they said, okay, I'm open to receiving anyone and loving anyone. It doesn't matter how they look like. But if your parents are telling me that this is for the sake of my future generation, I will do it. So they put their like personal desires aside and they got blessed, right? And that's how we were born. So we belong to this lineage, right? There's no way Satan can claim that. So I feel that those two concepts, like lineage and what the blessing means, because they're like all together, is something that you really need to own. Not, as I said, not only understand it logically, but really have some sort of experience with it, as David had by reading The Core of the Universe, as I had by being a facilitator, by being part of High Noon, by this experience that I always mention about Benjy's lecture on the meaning of the blessing, his experience with his wife, all of those like insights and moments that I was actively pursuing that understanding, right? And that's what we are doing in those groups. It's not like we are giving you the answers, right? Like, oh, that's the meaning of the blessing and lineage, but kind of like supporting people to question, to think, to reflect on their life right now, and how does that apply to them now, and what are they going to do, their steps to achieve this ideal in the future, right?
Yeah, that's a powerful explanation of lineage and the blessing that we don't talk about a lot. We don't talk about it a lot because it's hard to understand, but we have to talk about it because that's why we're here, isn't it? I mean, honestly, 90+% of the people that come through High Noon, they want to get blessed. That's why they're here. Or they're couples that are blessed recently and they want to have just an incredible blessing. So to ignore the significance of the blessing would be foolish, right? So both of you have talked about your understanding of the blessing and how it's significant and related to High Noon living. And still people don't see it. And I honestly don't want to focus on the negative, because everyone here is positive. And of course you could find, one black sheep in a sea of white sheep and say, oh, there's a black sheep. But honestly, we do get feedback from people in our movement saying, well, like, is it really that important? Is High Noon really doing anything significant for the providence? And all I have to do is show them the photos of Samara and Nori, right? Just getting blessed, High Noon couple. Show photos of David talking on stage in front of young people about sexual integrity. And I think it's just, well, I want to know what you guys think. Like, why is it that it's hard for people to grasp that the blessing, that High Noon living is the solution to preparing for blessing, to creating a radiant blessing?
Quite a difficult topic. This is like the hopelessness of our community.
Well, you dealt with this recently, right? You got pushback, David, in your own community from people who are like, no, we don't need High Noon, in London. So I know it's hard, but why is this hard to grasp for people?
I think there's two main parties of like reaction. One is there might be more, but the two that I thought of, one is that people have just genuinely lost hope that it's possible to live a life without shadows and that blessings will work functionally, like radiant couples. I think many people have just given up hope because they haven't experienced it in their life. They've only experienced shadows. They've only experienced not being able to overcome them. And they've only experienced a dysfunctional marriage, which is rather sad. It's rather sad. The other side is just the more kind of innocent person who is in our community and is looking for the right kind of programs, the right kind of things that will productively aid them in their life of faith, right? And we live in a bit of a confusing time because there's just so many different options to choose from. And so when they see High Noon, they might hear from somebody that, oh, they talk about sex and it's really inappropriate and, blah, blah, blah. And then they go, well, I don't want to do that because that sounds uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. I would feel much more safe and in my community if I just joined that workshop instead, right? And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with the other workshops. I mean, most workshops in our community are made for the purpose of connection, right, between brothers and sisters. But what is it that makes High Noon unique, right? What is it that makes us different from the rest of the programs is that we're dealing with the core issue of everything, but also dealing with the core solution as well. And so, but I think people just focus too much on the problems. So, porn, masturbation, talking about sex, that's weird stuff. They're not actually looking at the fact that we have the happiest couples coming out of our programs. We have the happiest singles connecting together. and ultimately we're having the happiest families. So they just haven't got their information straight. I think maybe they haven't done their research, or maybe we're just not. Maybe our voice is still quite small. But honestly, I can't see how someone who truly believes in God, truly loves God, and truly wants to live a blessed life, I can't see how that kind of person wouldn't see those being represented right here in High Noon. So I think it's either because they've given up hope or they're misinformed. That's what I think. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about 2 points. The first one, I think there is this fear, right? That if we talk about sex, people will get curious and they will want to have sex, kind of like this fear around the topic that's still a big taboo and something like that. And I think there is also the point that a lot of times we focus on the external things we need to do. For example, we need to attend Sunday service, we need to attend workshops, and we need to make sure that we are aligned with the providential stuff that are happening right now, which I do believe it's really, really important. But we often forget why we're doing that, right? We're not doing it because we are helping the church or because we are helping your mother, but because we are trying to perfect ourselves, right? And when we talk about perfection, we all know that it's perfection in love and not like you will never make a mistake in your life anymore, but you'll be able to love completely, right? And what is one of the biggest expressions of love? Sex, right? So it's kind of like inevitable that we talk about sex, but I think sometimes people are like, oh, we just need to do activities. Like we just need to go to this workshop, we need to do witnessing, we need to do this, and that. And we forget to connect that to our own course of perfection, of reaching perfection, right?
Yeah.
And we really need that. We need God's love. We need to perfect our love. And I really feel that Jaime was doing a really important work. Like as Benji was saying, there are a lot of couples that are getting blessed and there are Jaime couples. But what we don't see is the people that are not getting blessed because they're not living a life of integrity. I've experienced that, a person I was talking to that it really broke my heart to listen to that. But he didn't have sexual integrity. I don't know if I can say that. Like he was struggling with porn and masturbation. It was really difficult for him. Even being honest was really difficult for him. He called himself addicted to lying as well. And then he told me, I'm not worthy of someone like you. I'm not worthy of love. And that really broke my heart. I was like, what do you mean you're not worthy of me? I'm just a girl. I'm just a person, like, of course you are worthy. Even if you make mistakes, but you are worthy of God's love. Of course you are, and of everyone's love. But he just couldn't see it. He couldn't feel it. And how sad is that, right? So there are a lot of people that are not going to the blessing. They're not experience God's love, and they're not experience Chanukuk. Chanukuk's not a concept, it's not a far away thing. It's not a religious ideology or anything like that. It's reality. Our happiness, how much love we feel, how much connection we feel with others. We are not like talking about witnessing to people because we want to be the biggest church in the world, but because we want people to experience God's love. That's our goal, right? So I really feel that sometimes people forget that everything that we are doing is to like reach this perfection in love, right? And I feel that Heino is doing a great job in that by helping people to get rid of their shadows and connect to God's love and to feel that they actually deserve to go to the blessing. they're actually loved. They're good people. They're important. They're unique, you know. But yeah, basically my answer of why people wouldn't see that, those two things.
Yeah.
Fear of talking about sex and this disconnection between doing activities and the end goal of it.
Got it. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Mom. I mean, Samara, for that, reminding me that I'm worthy. It's beautiful. It's tragic. It's really heartbreaking to hear that kind of story, but it's very prevalent. It's very prevalent. I'll just add one more. I agree with all those points you guys made. I'll add one more that I think in general, I'm going to say this without getting pushback, but I don't care. I think in general, at High Noon, we're playing the long-term game, which means we're trying to impact the world generations from now. And I know the Wolfenbergers, Uncle Dave, is thinking beyond his lifetime. He wants High Noon to impact this world generationally, right? And I'm not saying that our movement is short-term thinking, but I kind of am. Not because they're in an immature way, but because of the nature of the messianic role of mother, right? There's a certain time constraint aspect of our faith that we're dealing with, right? Like you guys, I'm the first to go to Champyeong. I'm all about ancestor liberation. I'm going to Korea next month for the blessing and all this stuff, right? So like, I'm not the, anti whatever. I love mother. I do. But the reality is, like, her lifespan is 10, 15 years, right? Maybe most 20 years. And that's not a long time to save 8 billion people, right? That's not a movement. That's world domination, actually. That is world domination level influence. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but with a time constraint like 20 years, we kind of have to make some compromises to think a little short term, right? So I think naturally, if you have short term goals, then the solutions become short term, and we often sacrifice the long term gain. And High Noon I think it's a privilege actually that we have, that we're really trying to think long term, and it's even a good thing that High Noon's a nonprofit grassroots thing that was started by blessed families to support True Parents' vision, to support the blessing, to support people to go to blessing, not to take away. We're not trying to take away, God's vision. We're not trying to distill God's word, True Parents' word. We're trying to support it, highlight it, emphasize it, and bring people closer to God, closer to True Parents, closer to the blessing. And I think that people just don't understand that. That's what we're doing. It's just not known. And that's actually partly our responsibility. That's our fault, is that until now, we haven't explicitly said High Noon is preparing people for the blessing, full stop. We've never said that, actually. David, we've never had a program that was specifically dedicated to helping people prepare for marriage. Crazy, right? Crazy. We also have a program specifically dedicated to helping people have sexual integrity, ascend. We also have a program for couples that want to create radiant, intimate relationships. Yeah. So we're getting really, really clear at the High Noon level. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who are we serving? How are we doing it? And it's thanks to people like you guys who are making this a reality. I think when people see us talking, right, Samara, it's like, oh, we're always on stage and doing workshops, traveling the world. It's like, no, that's not what we do, right, David? A lot of the stuff that you're doing in Core is this, right? Messaging people, talking to people, accountability, group calls, in people's lives, having one-on-one conversations, not going on stage and shouting from the mountaintops about how amazing High Noon is. That's not the work we do. The work we do is really on the ground, talking with people, individuals, about their lives, heart-to-heart connection. We're practicing it. It's because you guys are practicing it, right? You guys, Samara and David. So I want to just appreciate everybody that is avid supporters of High Noon. We have so many people all across the world that are just on fire about high noon living. We just want to appreciate you guys. I don't want to point out the people that are kind of not understanding what we're doing, but I also want to challenge everyone listening. Please fight back, not in a negative, angry way, but if people talk about high noon is like, oh, they're just the porn people, mention it, stand up and be like, actually, it's more than that. They're actually preparing people for the blessing, and don't be afraid to push back a little bit, to stand up. All right. We really need that. We need that support. And so for me, it's kind of a rule of thumb of mine. If people are talking about high noon in any way, I will correct them if I feel like they don't understand. And that's okay. It's okay. It's misinformation, and that's fine. But my job is to help educate and to teach and to inform. And so is ours. So please do that. Not just here, but everyone listening. Please educate about what high noon is in a proper way. Send them to the podcast. Send them to our program. You guys want to wrap up with something?
Yeah, I think it was a good wrap up. So spread the word, guys. It's going to be beneficial for everyone. And as Benjy said, it's a supportive role, right? So the short term and the long term have to go together.
Yeah. And we literally have a program for you guys who want to prepare for the matching blessing. What's it called? Tell us about this program, David.
The core program, where we're going to study the core of the universe, True Father's words on marriage, sex, and intimacy. Please join. It's a free program. So this is great content that can really help you on your journey to the blessing. I look forward to seeing many of you there for next quarter. And I just also really want to encourage everyone to truly connect and to stay connected to their family, to their brothers and sisters, but also stay connected to your dreams and to God. Most importantly, stay connected to God. I truly believe that everyone is capable of having the most amazing future. So you're all amazing. God loves you.
All right. Thanks, David, Samara. We're going to jump off.